Hi guys, so welcome to lesson 1. So in this video, I'm going to be going over kind of the fundamentals of art, and we're going to be looking at particularly sketching and how to sketch efficiently and how to sketch so that you can capture the essence of what you're trying to capture, and kind of just how you can small tricks and tips on how you can improve your drawing techniques that aren't necessarily too difficult. So I want to focus on two different principles. So I'm sure that if you're in high school, you've probably heard of words like line, form, color, unity. You've probably heard of words like these. There's more, like, balance, stuff like that. And these are basically all kind of the fundamentals of like what goes into making art. So it's like a combination, or like maybe it could just even be one, but like it's kind of like the mixture and combination and like how you play with all of these principles of art that help you create artworks. So for this particular class, I want to focus on the first two, line and form. So how I read these two is like line is basically it gives the artwork, or it gives what you're drawing structure. So like, you have your lines that you're drawing and they form different shapes, and they form things that you can look at and identify. Like, this is a triangle, this is a square, rectangle. And like, you can you use these lines to create shapes, which is actually another point of art. But to focus on lines, artists play with different types of lines in order to achieve different types of looks and different types of textures, and like create contrast. You can use lines for many, many different things, and it all depends on how you use them, what lines you use, and what purpose you're using them for. So like, if you've ever drawn before, you've probably done all of these things that I'm going to talk about, but you don't really, think about it in like your conscious thought process. And I think with this, what I want to help you guys do is kind of recognize what you're doing. And then if you recognize it and transfer it from your subconscious thought process into your conscious thought process, that you can, then you can, control it better, and you can play around with it more efficiently, and, kind of just have more control over it. So that's what I want to teach you guys. Okay, so first of all, starting off with line, again, sorry. So there is, obviously, when you're drawing, you have, all these different, you're like, you may like, put different pressure and put different amounts of like thickness into your lines, right? And this is all called, line quality. So you want to play around and achieve like the optimal line quality for your sketch. That is the end goal. You want to achieve a good line quality, and you want to have a good sense of line quality so that you can, not just play around with it, but understand how to capture either the hard, like maybe if you're drawing like a building, the edges are going to be really rough and really hard, right? So if you're going to draw a building or sketch a building, it's like, you might want like a hard line quality. So you have like something like that. And then, you draw whatever. This is just a rough sketch, but like, you see this line, it's really thick, really hard, really bold. And so you want that kind of a line. But then you see what I've done here is I've actually lightened my pressure and I've made it a thinner line. I made it a thinner line, and this in turn contrasts with each other, and it kind of like adds more of a shadow to this side, and that creates this like dimension that you're creating. So on the other hand, if you wanted to play around with really light line quality, say you want to draw some kind of hair. So usually, you can have like really thick curly hair as well, but sometimes, you want like nice thin, wispy hair. And so for that, you might have like a really light pressure, and it's like this line quality is, so you can see like I'm controlling the line quality to make it purposefully thinner and lighter, and that makes the entire drawing have more of a light appearance, right? So another cool line technique is the concept of an implied line. So an implied line is basically when you start off, I'm going to draw an implied line over here. So basically an implied line is when you start off with a pencil stroke, and then you kind of end it with a pencil stroke. So you see how this part, there's an illusion of a line being created. I'll draw a better one, like over here. So like if you're drawing it, so like you can see there's like an implied line, right? Like it looks like there's a line here, but I've actually drawn nothing. So it's like, those are kind of the, that's an idea that you can also play around with in order to create contrast. Especially when it comes to sketching hair, implied line is a really good technique. So like say I'm drawing like a wisp of hair, then, I'm like, and then I have my implied line right there. And that creates that natural kind of highlight that's apparent in hair. So yeah, basically you want to understand, what you're drawing, and analyze how rigid or how smooth how smooth or rough the object is, and how much contrast you need to add. So contrast, let me just touch up on the idea of contrast really quickly, because I think it's really important. Contrast is when, you push two different sides of something to the extremes, or you push them apart and apart, so that both of them are kind of emphasized, right? So like, for example, if we look at this like building line thing that we made, you can see that the darker side has definitely been emphasized, but it's only been emphasized because of the lighter side. Whereas if we made the same building here, but we made all of it like dark, there wouldn't really be anything that's emphasized. As opposed to here, like this side we can see is definitely like the shadow, because there's an opposite to it. So it's kind of just how you play around with these things. Right. So we've gone over the different types of lines and how you can play around with lines. And now it's important to have a mixture of both these thick, like bold lines, as well as light, airy, wispy lines. And we've also looked into the idea of an implied line and kind of drawing lines without actually drawing anything. Where, like, because you'll learn that as you keep drawing and drawing, sometimes it's not really about what you draw, but also about what you don't draw. Like the negative space, as we call it. The negative space can be super important sometimes. And this is really shown when you start drawing lips. So like when you're trying to draw like a character's lips or something, this is a really good example of how what you're not drawing what you're not drawing actually, like, so I'm just gonna draw, like, a really quick, so if you have, like, a character, and so, like, in their lips, you can see, like, many people don't actually draw the top bit. And, like, you can play around with this, but it's kind of the areas that you don't draw that make up the form. And they're emphasized by the areas that you do draw. And so that's what makes it, you know, stand out and look more realistic. Because in real life, not everything is outlined, right? So in order to capture that, sometimes the negative space is the most important part. Okay. Next, let's talk about form. Because I think when it comes to sketching, line and form are really important, especially for rough sketches, because it gives you a really good idea of what you're trying to capture. So say you're drawing from real life, the line will give you the basic shape and the basic, you know, it'll kind of tell you where the contrast points and where the, like, light points are. And then form will really help you define and render those lines that you've created. And so rendering basically is, it means, like, adding like shadows and highlights and, you know, areas of color. So actually an interesting thing is you can actually showcase color, with just a pencil because color has these different hues, and different hues can be translated into different shades. So if you're going for, you know, like a more, like a lighter color, then if you add a lighter shadow, you can actually kind of, not visualize the color. You're not going to be able to, like, look at, like, a gray t-shirt and be like, oh, that's red. No. But you can get an idea of what kind of a red that'll be. So if it's like this, I know that it's going to be a lighter red as opposed to something like this. And actually, like, the later half of this portion will be converted to digital art. So when you shade like this in like pencil sketching, you can, it's really helpful when you translate it into a digital format, because you can just automatically, you know, color pick. You can change the color of this and then color pick it. So it's like, you know, you can create a red that is in this shade, or you can create a red that's in this shade, or a blue that's in this shade, or a yellow that's in this shade. So yeah, that's enough about color. Color is not the point of this. The point of this is form. So how do you add form? So form, again, as I mentioned before, it comes with shading, and it comes with creating highlighted areas and shadow areas. Now, I'm not the most well-versed in this, in like all the different kinds of techniques, but I'm going to teach you some of my favorites and some of the ones that I think help when you're translating particularly to a digital file. So like form, adding contrast and adding shade, adding shadows, it's so you can do it in many different styles, because so I'll go over some of my favorites. So for example, I'll draw a sphere. So if I have a sphere, there's the classic kind of, you know, like gradient shading, where you're using like blending technique. So you want to start off kind of, you know, intense in the sides, and then light pressure into the middle. And then, you know, you have your little area of highlight. So the thing with highlight, actually, like, you see, like, this part. So highlights are emphasized, especially when you're drawing on a paper like this, which is, like, already a white paper. And, you know, all you have is that shadow that you're creating. You don't have, like, an extra additional white to add further further highlight, sorry. The paper itself will be your highlight color, right? So what I like to do is, in order to emphasize a highlight, you need to add a shadow right beneath it. Like, you need to create that contrast, so then this will get highlighted even more when it's right next to this, right? When it's right next to the shadow, the highlight gets exaggerated. That's why when we blend, when we blend well and we kind of mix the shadow into the highlight, it seems more seamless. But here, it'll be more distinct. It'll be like, oh, there's a highlight. Pew. You know? Like, it's way more apparent. And this is kind of like your classic, blending kind of a highlight. Kind of shadow, sorry. Highlight and shadow. So, yeah, you could do that. Another really cool technique, and this is really helpful when you're working with pen as opposed to pencil. Pencil, this works great. Pencil, if you're, you know, creating these kinds of shadows using, the blending tool, it's really helpful because pencil has that capability. Graphite, charcoal has a great ability to blend well. And so, pens do as well if you're using, not a ballpoint pen, but more of a if you're using a ballpoint pen, it's a lot easier as opposed to if you're using something like a micron pen or an ink pen. This technique is easier. But something that I personally love to do, so I'll show you in this piece that I've created, like this little character sketch thing. Something that I like to do is identify. So I identify first where my shadows are going to be. So I know that, you know, hairline, there's going to be a shadow here, right? And this is something that a professor actually taught me for life sketching. So, you know, sketching people on the street, sketching things in real life while they're moving. So you only have a short period of time to draw it, right? So this is like quick sketching. This is something that he taught me to do. So you literally define the area where your shadow is going to be and you draw it explicitly. So for example, I want a shadow underneath the hair. I will literally draw a line to show where that shadow is, right? And say I created like a little bit of a neck. Then I know that there's going to be like a shadow here. I will literally draw the line for that. So then what I do is I just roughly add these lines to symbolize that that's where the shadow is going to be. And you can kind of work on it. And this is where you play around with your line quality as well. So, you know, like if you want to add like a little bit of shadow there, you want to add a little shadow under. And obviously like the hair shadow it looks darker, or I'm gonna make it darker than the face shadow. And this is really nice because it creates a more like cartoony effect. Here, there's also a shadow here. And I really like playing around with this style. I think it's really unique. And it only takes a couple seconds and you've already created a semi kind of like rendered form, and you know where the highlights are, you know where the highlights are, you know where the shadows are. So this is a great technique. Another thing that kind of stems off of this, I'll just draw like another quick face. But like another like if I'm drawing like a quick character. Another thing that works really well is like cross hatching. So if you're cross hatching, you're kind of, this is a horrible drawing. I'm sorry. This face is not good. But yeah, you kind of get the idea of cross hatching. It's like, you know, you diagonally drawing lines and you're crossing them over, you're overlapping them, and it creates a form. For example, I'll just draw a circle. Cross hatching. So you're creating these crosses. And again, you want to pay attention to line quality. Do not reference this. This is a bad example. I mean, actually, you know what? No, it's not a bad example. It's just, it's not as smooth or as, efficient of a transformation. Because you see, like, this, the line quality, like, the line here, it's so rigid, it almost acts like a complete cut. And so if you're doing this, then, like, why not just do this and make it a lot simpler? Like, you can even, like, just cross hatch here, right? But it's like you're defining that edge, and you're like, that's exactly what you're doing here. And it's just, it works as a style, sure, definitely, but like what we want to go for is kind of more of a smooth cross hatching pattern. And so for that, you need to maintain line quality. So you add pressure when you're starting, and then you decrease the pressure as you move. So, and then here, there's more pressure. Slowly, you ease up on the pressure, and yeah. And so that creates like a more gradiented cross-hatching pattern right here. Okay, so now that we've looked a little bit into the idea of line and form and what those two things mean when it comes to sketching in particular, I want to also teach you guys a couple exercises that you can do before you start, drawing, whether it be from a reference image, which will be the next episode, or if you're drawing from real life, or if, you're drawing from like a still life object, or even if you're just drawing from your imagination, just drawing whatever comes to you. Something that is really fun to practice is like a blind drawing. And this is basically when you just close your eyes and you let your pencil guide you wherever. Or what you can do is you can look at another object. So, for example, I will look at my hand. So my hand, I'm just gonna put my hand up here in front of my face, and I can see it, but I can't see my paper. So now I'm just going to, without looking at my paper, and without lifting up my pencil, that's another important thing. Do not lift up your pencil or pen. Look at your hand and just draw. And it's really, it's really funny, but it's also really, interesting to see what you kind of like come up with, and it gives you an idea of what your hand movement is like, how you translate what you see through your hand. So it's a really good starting point. So and a lot of people practice this before they draw, where they just do like a few blind drawing sessions or like blind drawing practices, and that really helps you get more of a control for the link between what your eye sees and what your hand is drawing. So okay, let's try it out. I'm gonna do this on camera. I've never done this before, so this is gonna be embarrassing. It's not gonna be good. I'm just warning you guys. Okay, so you see my hand, you see my fingers. And since this is not a tutorial on this particular exercise is not how to draw. I'm just trying to get basic idea of lines. And please note how I'm mentioning line and not shape, because if we were actually drawing this, oh shit. I don't know where Okay. So we're not actually drawing the shapes of the object. We're drawing the line that makes it up. Oh, wow. That's great. Good job, Ritika. Good job. This is, so this is blind contour is what we call it. I guess blind drawing also works, but this is a really interesting way to kind of see how your eyes are getting translated. Your eyes translate how your hand translates what your eyes are seeing. And doing this multiple times can actually really help you improve your hand-eye coordination skills. And and it also kind of lets you get more like free with your hands. So that's really important. Like if you're just like before you draw, like it's always a good idea to kind of practice, like, making different shapes and like kind of just going wild with your hands. It really like helps you be a lot more free and flow. And that the fluidity kind of translates into your actual drawing, because when you're being too rigid, and I think that's kind of the concept or the topic that I want to like summarize or end this video with, is don't be too like rigid with your hand movements, because don't be too rigid with your hand movements, because at the end of the day, like it doesn't really matter what your art style is, as long as you're having fun doing it, as cheesy as it sounds. But like the best kind of art happens when you're more fluid with your art making, and you're kind of just drawing whatever comes to you from your body, from your mind. So like just be more free, like let loose a little bit, but also keep these concepts, and I'll be exploring more of these concepts later on as I'm teaching you more techniques, teaching you how to especially progress from this into digital art. But yeah, keep these things in your mind. Don't live by them, but make sure that you understand when you're using them. So understand that when you're sketching, like even if you're sketching like a pot or something, like understand what line you're actually using. Understand oh yeah, that is an implied line. That is what I'm using. That's a technique. And like keep those in mind for when you draw, because when you keep them in mind, you'll have more control over them, as I mentioned. And yes, I will see you guys next time when we talk about how to reference, because referencing is a huge part of drawing and learning how to draw. All right. Thank you. Wait, let me just do a little